2 Samuel chapter 15. And it comes to pass afterward that Absalom prepares a chariot and horses for himself, and 50 men are running before him. And Absalom has risen early, and stood by the side of the way of the gate. And it comes to pass, every man who has a pleading to come to the king for judgment, that Absalom calls to him and says, Of what city are you? And he says, Your servant is of one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom says to him, See, your matters are good and straightforward, and there is none listening to you from the king. And Absalom says, Who makes me judge in the land, that every man who has a plea and judgment comes to me? Then I have declared him righteous. And it has come to pass, in the drawing near of any one to bow himself to him, that he has put forth his hand, and laid hold on him, and given a kiss to him. And Absalom does according to this thing to all Israel who come in for judgment to the king. And Absalom steals the heart of the men of Israel. And it comes to pass at the end of 40 years that Absalom says to the king, Please let me go, and I complete my vow that I vowed to Yahweh in Hebron. For your servant has vowed a vow in my dwelling in Geshur in Aram, saying, If Yahweh certainly brings me back to Jerusalem, then I have served Yahweh. And the king says to him, Go in peace. And he rises and goes to Hebron. And Absalom sends spies through all the tribes of Israel, saying, At your hearing the voice of the horn, then you have said, Absalom has reigned in Hebron. And 200 men have gone with Absalom out of Jerusalem, invited ones, and they are going in their simplicity, and have not known anything. And Absalom sends Ahithophel the Gilonite, a counselor of David, out of his city, out of Gilo, and his sacrificing sacrifices. And the conspiracy is strong, and the people are going and increasing with Absalom. And he who is declaring tidings comes to David, saying, The heart of the men of Israel has been after Absalom. And David says to all his servants who are with him in Jerusalem, Rise, and we flee, for we have no escape from the face of Absalom. Hurry to go, lest he hurries and has overtaken us, and forced evil on us, and struck the city by the mouth of the sword. And the servants of the king say to the king, According to all that my lord the king chooses, behold, your servants do. And the king goes out, and all his household at his feet, and the king leaves 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king goes out, and all the people at his feet, and they stand still at the farthest off house. And all his servants are passing on at his side, and all the Cherethite, and all the Pelethite, and all the Gittites, 600 men who came at his feet from Gath, are passing on at the front of the king. And the king says to Ittai the Gittite, Why do you go, you also with us? Return and abide with the king, for you are a stranger and also an exile, you to your place. Your coming in was only yesterday, and should I move you to go with us today, since I am going over to where, I do not know where, I am going? Return and take your brothers back. Kindness and truth be with you. And Ittai answers the king and says, Yahweh lives, and my lord the king lives, surely in the place where my lord the king is, if for death, if for life, surely your servant is there. And David says to Ittai, Go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite passes over, and all his men, and all the infants who are with him. And all the land is weeping with a great voice, and all the people are passing over, and the king is passing over through the Brook of Kidron, and all the people are passing over on the front of the way of the wilderness. And behold, also Zadok and all the Levites with him are carrying the Ark of the covenant of God, and they make the Ark of God firm. And Abiathar goes up until the completion of all the people to pass over out of the city. And the king says to Zadok, Take back the Ark of God to the city. If I find grace in the eyes of Yahweh, then he has brought me back, and shown me it and his habitation. And if thus he says, I have not delighted in you, here I am, he does to me as is good in his eyes. And the king says to Zadok the priest, Are you a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your son Ahimaaz and Jonathan son of Abiathar, your 2 sons, with you. See, I am lingering in the plains of the wilderness until the coming in of a word from you to declare to me." And Zadok takes back, and Abiathar, the Ark of God to Jerusalem, and they abide there. And David is going up in the ascent of the Mount of Olives, going up and weeping. And he has the head covered, and he is going barefooted, and all the people who are with him have each covered his head, and have gone up, going up and weeping. And David declared, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David says, "Please make the counsel of Ahithophel foolish, O Yahweh." And it comes to pass, David has come to the top, where he bows himself to God. And behold, Hushai the Archite is there to meet him, with his coat torn, and earth on his head. And David says to him, "If you have passed on with me, then you have been for a burden on me. And if you return to the city, and have said to Absalom, 'I am your servant, O king. I am also servant of your father until now, and presently I am also your servant,' then you have made void the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And are Zadok and Abiathar the priests not with you there? And it has been, the whole of the matter that you hear from the house of the king, you declare to Zadok and to Abiathar the priests. Behold, their 2 sons are there with them, Ahimaaz to Zadok, and Jonathan to Abiathar. And you have sent to me by their hand anything that you hear." And Hushai, David's friend, comes to the city, and Absalom comes to Jerusalem.